We believe in a God
who would rather surprise than condemn us,
who would rather die than to lose us,
who throws parties to welcome lost people home.
We are a team,
a force,
a community,
a family,
filled with the humble wonder of serving a surprising God.
We practice radical generosity,
experiencing life together,
and the willingness to be used by God.
Anywhere, anytime.
We exist to share this God with a world that needs Him now more than ever.
We welcome anyone to join us, regardless of their past.
Because our God promises
a better than expected future.
All right, everybody, welcome to another installment of Worship Anywhere. Pastor Matt here. Great to be with you guys as we come into the Christmas season. This time of year is an exciting time. A lot of anticipation, expectation, a lot of good family time. I'm hoping that it's a healing and a growing time for you. Before we dive in, I want to just give a quick announcement that we shared last week at Surprise related to the invitation that's been extended to us to consider a new worship home in 2027. Here's a picture that Greg Molinaro from Center Counseling showed of their anticipated building they're hoping to build up behind Cashwise North in North Bismarck. And they're inviting us to consider making our worship home the second floor of this beautiful building. And so we're learning about his invitation. We're giving feedback on the final design plans. And here's the timeline that we're looking at. Sunday is November 30th, December 7th. We're going to have open forums after church in room 103 where anybody can come, learn about the plan, ask questions of Greg, and give input for any needs that Surprise might be looking for. And then we'll be having meetings as scheduled with Greg and our team through to January 13th, where our teams will give feedback, our leaders will give input, our facility task force will be involved. And then on January 14th, our elders are going to vote on whether or not we want to sign a letter of intent to rent and worship there starting in, it would be around April of 2027. So it's a 12-month building project, and Greg hopes to break ground in April of 2026 after securing financing. And so that gives us just under a year and a half of transition time if our elders decide to move in that direction. But we don't want to decide without your input. So you can email J.R. Casper, our operations director. He's also the chair of our facility task force. That group's going to be kind of gathering together the input and questions that we have and the feedback we'd like to offer. And we'd love you to be involved in this exciting time. Please keep this in prayer. We ask God to lead Center Counseling and Surprise Church. And if it's into a shared partnership where He could do all kinds of cool stuff, we would be excited, but we want to follow His direction. So thank you for your prayers and your participation. We are in a series right now called Birth Stories. There's a lot of great birth stories in the Bible. And I thought, you know what, instead of just getting to Christmas and talking about Jesus' birth, there's a lot of birth stories in the Bible that lead to Jesus' birth, that are sort of anticipatory stories, including the one we're going to talk about today. So every week this month, we're hoping to share some stories of birth stories of people at Surprise, talking about their treasured memories and memorable events from birth stories in their family. But we're also going to be going through those different stories in the Bible that talk about different scenarios of birth situations, including way back in Genesis, Abraham and Sarah. Now let's go back to Genesis 12, where the beginning of this birth story started. And it starts in a very interesting way. The Lord had said to Abram, at this time his name was Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household, to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation." And he goes forth to promise many different things about this nation that he was going to build through Abraham. At the time, Abraham was 75 years old. Now, the invitation that God gave was to leave everything that he was comfortable with, his country, his kindred, his household, his family's household, to leave your comfort zone. And he said, just go to the place I'm going to show you. You don't even know where this place is. The promise that he offered was that through your offspring, I'm going to save the planet. I'm going to do something through the nation I build through you that's going to save the world. And I think that God was putting his finger on something inside of Abraham that I think is that he put into all of us. Now, Abraham was comfortable. He was in a comfort zone in his home, and God told him to leave all that. Why would anyone do that? Unless there's something that was inside of the invitation from God that matched something that was inside of Abraham, that was an ache. And I think you know that ache as well as I do, that ache to refuse to settle for just being comfortable, that ache to totally just surrender for God, like I am all in for you, not to hold back and I want to have this under my control and this area that I don't seek God with and hand over to God, but to totally surrender? What would that feel like? To stop playing it safe, to do something important, to leave a legacy. Long after Abraham was dead, God said that there's going to be a nation that would save the world. And if Abraham stayed in his comfort zone, he would totally miss out on all these things. And so for Abraham, it was worth leaving and listening to God and going to this unknown place, saying goodbye to his comfort zone to leave a legacy. Now you might say to yourself, I'm getting up there. I'm set kind of in my life. I don't think I could leave everything behind right now. It's kind of too late for me. Just remember how old Abraham was. So Abraham went, it says in verse 4, as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him, his relative. Abraham was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife, Sarai. 75, even in today's higher life expectancy, 75, while there are many healthy 70-somethings, that's getting up there, right? Like you're in the retirement phase of your life. Back then, I bet that was rare to live that long. And the idea that there could be something big, the biggest part of Abraham's life, was still in his future at age 75, that might have been a little hard to believe. But if you think it's too late for you, just remember, it wasn't too late for Abraham. In fact, the last two presidents of the United States, last three, I guess, have been upper 70s. Some of the best things in life happen far later than we might think. But wait a minute, wasn't Abraham kind of a spiritual all-star? Like, he's always mentioned in the New Testament as like this example of faith. So why are we going to try to read a story and emulate a guy who was a spiritual all-star? Well, not so fast. God made this promise to Abraham, but what we're going to see right now is time and time again he struggles to believe it. Look at this. Right after the promise was given and Abraham leaves, they go to towards the promised land of Israel, but they have to divert to Egypt. Here's what happened. And I'll say this was maybe a year or two later after some travel and trying to settle. So let's say he's not 75 anymore. Let's say he's somewhere around 77, okay? So the age counter is on the right of the screen here. It says, now there was a famine in the land, and Abraham went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. And as he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. So far, so good. This is a nice greeting card. This is a nice anniversary card. This is a great start to a date night. I know what a beautiful woman you are. But he doesn't have romance on his mind here. He doesn't have some kind of a bouquet of roses and a chocolate and a nice card here. He's trying to cover his butt. He says, when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but will let you live. So say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. So he passes her off as his sister, and they end up taking him into the king's household as if she's a single woman. Abraham doesn't seem to care because he just doesn't want to die. Does this sound like a great model of faith to you? He's willing to sell his wife off as his sister to save his own skin. Abraham struggles to believe God is going to do what he said he was going to do. He struggles. And he takes matters into his own hands a number of times. See, timing and control are the hardest things to surrender to God. I mean, we can surrender things we don't care that much about. We can give up, when we've tried everything, and we can say, now I need your help. Or when I don't have any option left, I might look up and say, now I need you. But when it comes to timing, being on my time, when it comes to things that I want to go a certain way and I want to control, man, that can be hard to say, not my will, but yours, Lord. Make me content with how this goes, because I'm going to trust your timing and your will and your control. I don't need control. I don't want to try to control things. That's hard. It was hard for Abraham too. Let's go forward a couple years. Maybe the story continues a little bit. Genesis 15 comes. Let's say he's somewhere around 80 right now. We're guessing. He's starting to get really impatient. It's been years, and there's no baby, and he's 80-ish. So he says in Genesis 15, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? You've given me no children, so a servant in my household is going to be my heir. I don't have a son, so everything in my legacy is going to be passed over to some hired hand. Like, I don't see how this promise is going to happen. Then the word of the Lord came to him. A son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. God is reminding him of his promise. He took him outside and said, look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, so shall your descendants be. Sometimes you just need a visual aid. Abraham's starting to panic. It's been 5 years, God. I don't know if I can wait any longer. Let's go outside. Look at all those stars. You see those stars? Yeah, I made those stars. That's what your descendants are going to be like. That's what it's going to look like. You see, sometimes we want God to pander to our impatience. We want him to adjust or work around our impatience. We get impatient easily. We want things to get fixed faster, sooner, quicker. But he keeps pointing us back to his promise. He keeps pointing us back to who he is and what he promises. So he points Abraham to the sky and says, remember my promise. But how long is that going to last? I mean, it's been 5 years. How long is this going to last where he's going to look up and say, oh, no, there's a lot of stars out there, so I trust God, I trust God, I trust God. When he looks up at that sky dotted with stars and galaxies, how long can Abraham trust and wait based on this most recent reassurance? Well, not very long. A few years passed, now he's 86. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children. This is 11 years later now. But she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave. Or servant would be another way of putting this. Perhaps I can build a family through her. Well, Abraham says, okay, whatever you say, honey. He agreed to what Sarai said, and Abraham was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. So, taking matters into your own hands, 11 years after God made the promise, 6 years after his last bit of reassurance, look at the sky, your descendants are going to be like that. Abraham basically had completely given up and moved on and said, I'm just going to have another girl give me this baby. I'm just going to agree to a different plan than the one God gave me. He basically gave up and moved on. And so God has to come to him, but he waits another 13 years. When Abraham was 99 years old. So now Ishmael would have been a teenager by now. The Lord appeared to him. Abraham fell face down, and God said to him, no longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be called Abraham, for I have made you the father of many nations. Ra means many. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your offspring, your descendants. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Abraham fell face down. He laughed. He laughed and said to himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at age of 90? And Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. Okay, I put a 1 next to the word laughed there because this is the first of several references to laughter. Keep that in your mind. And he's 99. He's now, 24 years after God initially made the promise. He's almost 100 years old, and he's like, God, this is starting to get kind of silly. It's been too long, and I'm too old. I was probably too old at 75. Now I'm 99, okay? God, just do the math. This isn't going to work. It's too late. And I think he represents a lot of us when we get moments in our life where we feel like it's too late. It's too late for this relationship. It's too late for this job. It's too late for these sins and this guilt I'm carrying. It's just too late. But for God, it never seems to be too late. He's not worried about the timeline at all. Then God said, yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. Isaac has a very interesting meaning. We're going to get into it in a minute. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. So I'm not going to just discard this other boy. But I made you a promise, and I'm going to keep that promise. You're going to have a son with Sarah. And he gets real specific now about timing. Finally, after 24 years, he lets him know when. I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out and my Lord, my husband, is old, will I now have this pleasure? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Third mention of the word laugh. And say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, I did not laugh. Fourth mention of laugh. But he said, yes, you did laugh. 5 mentions of the word laugh. It's like they're emphasizing laughter here to underscore a point. Now, there are times when things are funny for the wrong reason. This week I had to go to the post office, and I had to pick up a package. This is one of the notes they leave on the door, and it was said, all right, go pick up the package. And it happened to be a slow day there, and I don't know why it was a slow day. They had one staff person working, and I stood in line that was about 20, 30 yards long. And then after 15 minutes, I didn't move one step. It was like, I'm starting to wonder if I'm going to be able to get to my kids, pick them up after school. It's like, oh man. And at first, everyone's kind of annoyed. And then there came a point where everybody's kind of looking at each other like, this sucks, I'm mad. Making grumbling noises loud enough for the one staff person to hear. Things start to deteriorate. Luckily, we didn't get into any kind of cannibalism or anything like that. No one had to, make a fire out of their clothes or anything. But I mean, it was starting to get a little dicey. And then it got to a point where it just got funny. Like, I've been here an hour and a half. What is the deal? And people were starting to get past the point of angry to almost a delirium. We're like, well, Merry Christmas here at the post office. We're still here. I'm on a deserted island, and I haven't seen my family for a month. Like, we're cracking jokes. Everyone's just starting to kind of lose it. It was hopelessly hilarious. Hopelessly hilarious. After 25 years of waiting, hope had become a joke to Abraham and Sarah. God was telling them the same thing, but the older they got, the lower the odds seemed to get. It just sounded funny. It just sounded silly. It sounded like a joke. Because hope can kind of hurt after a while when you feel like it's not going to happen. Holding out hope is painful, so it's much easier just to dismiss it as a joke and laugh about it. Well, Abraham turns 100. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son. Don't ask me how this works at age 100, but God can do whatever he wants. Bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. So this was actually perfect timing. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. You know what Isaac means? It means he laughs. God told him what you're going to name your kid. And you're going to name your kid after the laughter that accompanied me reminding you of my promise when you didn't believe me. You're going to remember laughing at what ended up coming true. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. Different kind of laughter. Now, this is the laughter of joy. 6th and 7th reference to laughter in these chapters of Genesis. 6, 7. 7 in Hebrew in the Old Testament culture was a number of completion, wholeness, God's number, 7. 7 days to a week. It's like a completion of a promise fulfilled. Story that started with kind of sarcastic laughter turned out to be laughter of joy by the seventh laugh. Is there an area of your life where you're losing hope? Ask yourself, where in my life is faith kind of becoming a joke? Where I'm starting to wonder what I'm actually waiting for? Where people are starting to mock me for still believing that God's going to do something in this relationship, in this situation, in this physical issue I'm having? Where could I limit God? Where could I give up? Where could I take matters into my own hands? What would you do if in this area of your life you just said, I am going to act like there is no God, he's not real, he's not going to help me? What would you do if you took matters into your own hands? And what would you do if you are 100% sure that God was going to come through for you just like he did for Abraham, however his timing works out? It might be way after you hope. It might even be after you die. It might be when you get to heaven and you see how everything was ordered for God's good plans. It might be way after your ideal timeline. But what would you do and how would you operate in this area and in your life if you knew that God was going to come through 100% and it was going to end as well as it could possibly end? What would you do if you're on your own? And what would you do if you trust God? Because remember, they laughed at Jesus too. They did not believe that Jesus was who he said he was. John chapter 8. Jesus is talking to the teachers of the law, and he replied to them, your father Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day, and he saw it, and he was glad. They look at him like, what are you smoking? You are not yet 50 years old, they said to him, and you have seen Abraham who lived centuries and centuries ago? He gets real firm and says, very truly I tell you. Jesus answered, before Abraham was born, I am. This is what got him killed, this kind of talk. Where God in the Old Testament said his name was I am. That's what you can call me, I am. And now Jesus, who lived centuries and centuries after Abraham, says that before Abraham lived, I am. At this, they picked up stones to stone him. They mocked him, and eventually they killed him. They laughed at him on the cross. Because Jesus, they didn't even know, they didn't realize Jesus was actually the offspring that God promised to Abraham, who would save the planet. Paul picks this up in Galatians 3, where it's like, it says through your offspring, all the nations and families of the world will be blessed. It's actually a singular word, offspring, like individual offspring, seed. He was talking about Jesus. Through Abraham's seed, his offspring, God was going to save the world, and Jesus is the fulfillment of that promise. So it didn't just take 25 years to fulfill. It took hundreds, 1,000+ years to fulfill that promise. Jesus was the fulfillment of that promise. So just remember this, that at the end of time, it's all going to be the way Jesus wants it. He was there at the beginning, and he's going to be there at the end, and everything's going to work together for good for those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. And they might be laughing now. You might feel like faith is almost a joke now for how this situation is just continuing to be a struggle and not working out, and the timing isn't going your way, and you don't feel like you're getting you can control it like you wish you could. Jesus has the last laugh. Jesus has the last laugh, and it's going to be a laugh of joy. Anytime you feel like faith is starting to feel like a joke, remember that Jesus has the last laugh. It's going to work out just as he wants to and just as he's promised. Let's pray. Father, show us that area of our life where we need to learn how to trust you, and help us to do that thing and to think that and believe in a way that we would live if we were confident that you would care for us just as you did for Abraham, that you would keep your promises to us just as you did for him, and help us to let go of control and our sense of timing. Not only did it take 25 years for Abraham, it took centuries for Christ to come. And you're still keeping that promise as you work to redeem the world through Jesus. Help us to be comfortable without control. Not inside our comfort zones, but inside of your care and your will. Help us to trust you and to believe that you have the last laugh, even when others laugh at our faith today. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have an awesome day. We'll see you soon.